a couple of chants. Do you hear that my voice is not loud enough? Okay, you start. Okay, we're gonna start with a chant where we go, Marcos, you're not welcome here. 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 Okay, not bad. Okay. Alright, next one. Not another nickel, not another dime. No more money for Marcos' crime. Not another nickel, not another dime. No more money for Marcos' crime. Yeah, okay, not bad. One more. Two more. Okay. The Philippines is not for sale. 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 Hey, yeah, okay. Alright, last one. Hurry up. We're gonna finish this off on Ang tao! Ang bayan! Tayo na lumalaban! Tayo na lumalaban! Ang tao! Ang bayan! Okay. Woo! Alright, sit down. Alright, we're giving it to the MCs. Yeah.
Greetings! Comrades, kasamas, thank you for coming out here today to say, Marcos, you are not welcome here. My name is Carolyn. I'm a member of Bagong Yangsang Makabayan, or New Patriotic Alliance. Yeah. Woo! Bayan Oregon is an alliance of grassroots, anti-imperialist Filipino organizations representing migrant workers, women, youth, and students. We are a part of the national democratic movement in the Philippines with a socialist perspective, organizing the 99%, the Filipino masses, with the workers at the core.
Hello, maayong hapon. My name is Daphne, and I am a member of Malaya Movement Portland. And we are a broad movement of individuals, organizations, and other various formations who are all united under our objectives to defend and stand for human rights, democracy, and sovereignty in the Philippines. Thank you for being here today. So we are gathered here in Cherry Shrunk Plaza. And in case you didn't know, we're going to share a little bit of history about our venue. We are only 2 blocks away from Lonsdale Square, which actually contains 2 monuments that are memorializing the 2nd Oregon Volunteer Infantry, part of the first large American fighting force sent overseas to fight in the Spanish-American and Philippine-American wars. We even have a park in Southeast named after their commanding officer, Colonel Sumner's park. Yeah, and we know that Kabataan Alliance is even doing some educational and campaign work around what it would look like to actually change the name of those parks. So please reach out to them if you want to learn more about that. So yeah, if you didn't know, Oregon has played a particular historical role in defending U.S. military and economic interests in the Philippines at the cost of millions of innocent Filipino lives. For one, in March 1899, after receiving exaggerated reports of an attack by Filipino insurgents on 2 American companies of the 22nd Infantry Regiment, the 2nd Oregon Volunteer Infantry Regiment then killed or drowned every Filipino civilian living within 12 miles of the San Mateo River. This was only the beginning of a long record of the U.S.'s atrocious war crimes against the Filipino people. So like these monuments that are standing right over there by us today, we know that today's trilateral summit gestures to and spouts these slogans of warm relations and robust cooperation between the U.S. and the Philippines, but what is actually being glorified and upheld is a legacy of violence and plunder.
So Bayan in the National Democratic Movement was formed during the rise and reign of US-backed fascist dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr. And today, in 2024, we see his son, dictator Bongbong Marcos, hell-bent on changing and amending the 1987 Constitution through so-called economic charter change, or cha-cha.
So though Marcos and his cronies claim that the current Cha-Cha is only economic, these amendments are easily the first steps towards pushing for more constitutional changes that are not economic, such as extending term limits and erasing the 1987 ban on U.S. military bases and the ban against nuclear plants and nuclear weapons of foreign powers like the U.S. and China.
It's really important to note that the 1987 Constitution, that was won by ousting Bongbong Marcos' father through people power. People power. And now his son, Marcos Jr., he wants to open the Constitution and the nation, right, and all of our resources, all of our people, to U.S. imperialists, to foreign investors who will plunge our land, displace our kababayan, and further plunge our economy into underdevelopment, where there will be no jobs left for our kababayan back home.
So, boo. So while he's not only propagating lies about what his family did to the Philippines, Marcos also has the nerve to claim he's heralding a bagong Pilipinas, a new Philippines. Instead, he cements the legacy of his corrupt father and a system that has done nothing but plunge our people further into poverty. His regime has access to over 700 billion pesos in unprogrammed funds, while our farmers are suffering from a nationwide drought and workers are facing unrelenting layoffs.
So today was the trilateral summit between the U.S., Japan, and the Philippines, and it comes as the U.S. is ramping up military exercises and military base building in the Philippines, claiming to protect the Filipino people from China. Now we know, we as BAYAN, as Malaya, as any peace-loving person, we know that this trilateral cooperation will not promote so-called inclusive economic growth, nor further peace and security in the Indo-Pacific, but it will further plunder our land and our resources, displace Filipino peasants, urban poor, and workers, and force now 3 generations of our kababayan abroad. So as Filipinos overseas, BAYAN Oregon, we fight alongside migrants who desperately left our beloved homeland in search of work, forced to leave in order to survive and feed their loved ones. Migrants who are raising their children on FaceTime. They're working multiple jobs and sending their hard-earned remittances back home, which props up the Philippine economy. And we know that that current economy only serves the ruling elite, both Philippine and U.S. So we as BAYAN, we mobilized here today alongside Malaya because we're protesting this first trilateral summit between these 3 countries, because we know it will only further solidify the chokehold, the military and economic chokehold that the U.S. has on the Philippines.
So the Department of State says that the expected outcomes from today's Trilat Summit include U.S. investment in high-quality infrastructure that will supposedly improve the lives of the Filipino people, including things like rails, ports, and energy security. But we know that our lives will not be made better by U.S. investment in infrastructure or in so-called shows of military resolve. Some of the outcomes of their meetings today even say that they plan to prioritize human and labor rights. But as Malaya, as peace-loving organizations, we know that what we really stand for is a genuine democracy where the Filipino people have true sovereignty and can build the society that we want. Our resources for our nation's development and the unification of our families. So in our program today, we'll be having speakers who are sharing campaigns and solidarity statements that show solutions and actions that are based in uplifting the people's demands. So with that, we'll be welcoming our first speaker from the No to New Scale Coalition, Bryson of Anagbayan, Portland. Organizations in this coalition are committed to exposing and condemning the disastrous effects of small modular nuclear reactors, an expensive and dangerous energy source that Marcos and the Oregon-based New Scale Power Corporation aim to build on Philippine soil. So I'll pass it to Bryson.
Thank you, thank you. Can y'all hear me? Yeah! Thanks for being here. My name is Bryson. I'm the BAYAN Oregon coordinator. I'm also a chairperson of Manag BAYAN Portland. And I'm also part of the growing local New to New Scale Coalition. So today I'm here to talk about New Scale and what their effects are on the Filipino people. So in May 2023, Marcos went to DC to meet up with New Scale Power Corporation. And they had plans to scout some spaces in the Philippines. They had plans to build small modular nuclear reactors. And they are backed by Filipino billionaire Enrique Razon Jr. Whoa! New Scale has been trying and failing miserably to even build or begin a single project here in the US. Every investor they had has canceled, and their shareholders are currently banding together for a class action lawsuit against them. From 2022 to 2023, the US fast-tracked the signing of the 123 agreement with the Philippines. These 123 agreements is making it possible for the US to send nuclear materials for peaceful purposes to other countries. There's nothing peaceful about the 123 agreement. A key component that all nuclear material and infrastructure be protected by armed guards, up to and not limited to collaborating with the local police and military. What this means for New Scale to operate in the Philippines, all small modular nuclear reactor parts and uranium are mined from indigenous land and then would need to be shipped across the ocean, causing carbon emissions in the Philippines. Land would need to be developed, likely taken from the peasant or indigenous community. Indiscriminate bombings by the Philippine military will force the civilian populations to evacuate, allowing companies like New Scale to come in and develop the extractive projects. This land and all the nuclear materials would be guarded by private security or police or military, or all three. Are communities safer with the private security or the military patrolling? Right. Are people in downtown Portland safer with private security and police patrolling? Right. The Philippine government has already begun to crack down on people voicing opposition to the false solution to the people's affordable energy crisis. Last month, 2 Filipino environmental organizers have been working to expose the dangers of expensive and untested SMRs, Eco and Jack. They were beaten and abducted by masked police officers. They resurfaced several days later alive, but this is the reality on the ground. This is where our US tax dollars are going. This is what the 123 agreement means for the Filipino people. This is what New Scale is part of creating. Boo. The Philippines and the Filipino people deserve an affordable, safe, and self-sufficient energy sector. Whether it's New Scale or another nuclear energy company, we do not need foreign investment and US military intervention to advance industrialization in the Philippines. So join our coalition and fight alongside us for energy solutions for and by the Filipino people. No to New Scale! No to New Scale! You are son of the Philippines! U.S. out of the Philippines!
U.S. out of the Philippines!
U.S. imperialist!
Number one terrorist!
U.S. imperialist!
Number one terrorist!
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking, Bryson. Oregon New Scale Corporation reminds us that our lives with those of the Filipino people are actually very materially intertwined. We even heard one of the outcomes from the Trilateral Summit today, that aside from advancing their clean energy nuclear agenda, the US and the Philippines will also be exploring a partnership for growing opportunities and diversifying the global semiconductor system. The semiconductor industry is big here in Oregon, so it's only one way. It's only one way that our lives and our local economy here is actually very tied to what is happening back home. Our next speaker is Malcolm from Veterans for Peace. So we'd like to welcome Malcolm up to the mic. Veterans for Peace is an anti-war organization of military veterans and allies. And their local chapter is also a member of the Resist US-led war movement. So please, everyone, welcome Michael.
Good evening. It's been a while since I've been behind a mic. You'll have to forgive a rocky start. But my great-grandfather was a medic 125 years ago in the Philippines. When he went off to war, he was writing a diary that was meant to be like he was writing his mother. And so he was quite excited to write about the marshaling in San Francisco and boarding the boat, life in camp and all that. And then he saw the aftermath of the first battle. He didn't write another thing until he was gone. There was nothing that he could write that he wanted his mother to see. The United States has been an imperial nation from its inception. It was founded in genocide, and it hasn't changed a bit. We're still pushing our empire farther and farther into the world, attempting to take over and wasting our opportunity for a good life all over the world. The United States should basically be out of everywhere. And that's what I've actually carried a sign saying it's U.S. out of everywhere. And I think it's one of the best signs. I mean, how do you write all those wars on one sign? There's no way. Which speaks to the insanity of the situation. How many nations are we actually at war with de facto? I can't count them on one hand. This is nuts. And so, we in Veterans for Peace, as we have now for a few decades, are calling for U.S. out of everywhere. It's time to bring our people home from the bases all over the world and start acting like we're a member of a world community instead of trying to run it.
Yeah!
Thank you, Malcolm. We'd like to invite up our next speaker, who is Kira from Half the Sky, a revolutionary organization of gender-oppressed and nationally oppressed working peoples. Half the Sky is committed to women's emancipation and dismantling imperialism, capitalism, and sexual commodification. Please give a warm welcome to Kira.
Thank you. Thank you, Bayan and Malaya, for inviting us here. My name is Kira, and I'm an organizer with Half the Sky Pacific Northwest chapter. I'm also part of the local Cancel RIMPAC campaign in Portland. We stand here today in solidarity with the Philippine orgs speaking up against the inherent violence that is furthered by the Trilateral Leadership Summit happening in DC right now. As an organization of nationally oppressed, gender-oppressed workers and survivors of gender-based violence, we recognize the true intentions of the Trilateral Summit. With increased presence of the U.S. military, places often see higher rates of violence against women as a result of a larger process of normalized violence. Places like the Philippines, Okinawa, Guam, and Hawaii. The U.S. military literally used to have a slogan called "A Girl in Every Port," emphasizing, boo. This emphasizes the male sexual entitlement perpetuated by the U.S. military. We see that military provocation exercises like RIMPAC lead to an increase in sex buying and sex trafficking in women and girls in Hawaii. Indigenous women often see the highest rates of sexual violence and experience the triple oppression of patriarchy, racism, and capitalism. The Trilateral Summit is framed as a union for peace, freedom, and a prosperous Indo-Pacific. It's framed as a gathering for security, clean energy, and climate cooperation. But we know that this trilateral works in conjunction with other imperialist unions, such as free trade agreements like APEC, which we protested last year, and military warfare exercises such as RIMPAC, which is coming up this summer in occupied Hawaii. It works in conjunction to increase the dependency of semi-colonial countries such as the Philippines on imperialist countries such as the US and Japan. It creates a direct path of natural resources, labor, and women for countries like the US and Japan to exploit. Our call is to follow the Cancel RIMPAC coalition on our campaign to end US military provocation via war games like RIMPAC, to get the US military out of Portland, to end Portland's Fleet Week that happens this summer in June, no to US military buildup in Asia and the Pacific, and cancel RIMPAC!
More Marcos crimes!
Not another nickel! Not another dime!
No more money for Marcos crimes!
Not another nickel! Not another dime!
No more money for Marcos crimes!
Thank you, Kira, for highlighting that imperialism means war, right? Wherever a U.S. military base is built or expanded upon, violence against women and children increases. And in a country like the Philippines, where there's no national industrialization or jobs for its people, the sex trade industry thrives. We refuse to let our women, our gender-oppressed people, our children be pawns of war in the Asia-Pacific region. Our next speaker is from the Oregon to Palestine Coalition. The coalition and its organizations are unequivocally anti-Zionist, wholly opposing U.S. imperialism and U.S. aid to the Zionist entity through economic deals and military exchanges. Please welcome Hannah.
All right, warm and militant greetings, comrades. My name is Hannah. I'm with the Palestinian Youth Movement and the Oregon to Palestine Coalition. We are different organizations, anti-imperialist, Palestinian and Arab organizers united in the fight against imperialism to realize a free Palestine. In order for there to be a free Palestine, there's first and foremost a deep need to understand that what's given the Zionist state full protection and immunity to be 6 months into the most witnessed and documented genocide of our lifetimes is U.S. imperialism and its puppet allies. It's not enough anymore to demand just a cease of fire that's raining down in the Palestinians of Gaza. We demand for the full dismantling of U.S. imperialism and for the liberation of Palestine and all of our colonized and oppressed siblings from Palestine to the Philippines. The genocide of Palestinians today is not just the attempt to erase Palestinians. It is the testing grounds for weapons of mass death to be used on indigenous people, black and brown people in our communities at home and abroad. Every act of imperialist and colonial state violence, whether it is by the U.S. directed neo-colonial regimes of the Philippines or the U.S.-backed settler colony of Israel, is an exercise against all masses everywhere who nurture and caretake our lands. Our oppressors and their partners are linked through tactics and material interests. Today's trilateral meeting is an example of that. Their agenda of coming together is an agenda of displacing and killing indigenous land defenders in the countryside to make way for the plundering of the Cordilleras and U.S. military bases. It is an agenda for the extrajudicial killings of trade unionists, journalists, and revolutionaries who fight for self-determination and the sovereignty of the people. The Balikatan Exercises are putting the Philippines shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. empire as another military outpost, the same way the illegitimate colony of Israel is one, in order to further its imperialist aggression. It is being used with U.S.-funded weaponry, U.S.-bought weaponry. It is funded with our dollars. And while our oppressors are entangled from the same offshoot of U.S. imperialism, our joint struggle is forged stronger because of it. We are cognizant of who our enemies are. We are cognizant of who our allies are. We know who our comrades are in this struggle for liberation against the neo-colonial occupation of the Philippines, against the settler colonial occupation of Palestine, because we are both fighting for land that should not be owned by multinational corporations. It is not owned by the wealthy elite. It is owned by the people who take care of it. The landlessness of Palestinians is a shared struggle with the Filipino people, meaning that for the full return and liberation of Palestine, we must be in joint struggle with the liberation of the Philippines.
From Palestine to the Philippines! Stop the U.S. war machine! From Palestine to the Philippines! Stop the U.S. war machine!
Thank you, Hannah, for helping us see the relations between how the U.S. is propping the Zionist state to its wannabe imperialist puppets like Bong Bong Marcos, right? They highlighted that later this month during the Balikatan military exercises, the Zionist state of Israel is supplying missile systems to the Marcos regime for these exercises. As Filipinos, we have more in common with the Palestinian masses than with the ruling elite, and we remain steadfast in respecting the self-determination of the Palestinian people. Our final speaker in today's program is from the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines, which is a solidarity network of orgs and individuals fighting for just and lasting peace in the Philippines. Welcome, Gabe.
Militant greetings of solidarity. My name is Gabe and I'm with the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines. We are an alliance of solidarity activists representing faith, labor, environmental, and other progressive organizations and individuals, building solidarity for the Filipino people's struggle for self-determination and national liberation. We are here today to speak out against Biden's meeting with the #1 enemy of the Filipino people, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. We ask, why do we condemn this most recent visit of Marcos Jr.? Because Marcos Jr. unapologetically continues the legacy of his father, Marcos Sr., and predecessor, Rodrigo Duterte. Because rather than address the people's demands for genuine land reform and freedom from feudal exploitation, Marcos intensifies the counter-revolutionary war in the countryside, indiscriminately bombing peasant communities and brutally torturing and murdering those who stand up to defend their lands. In a futile attempt to extinguish the long-running armed conflict in the countryside and better serve U.S. geopolitical interests in the region, Marcos resorts to despicable violations of international humanitarian law, which only stokes the fire of the people's resistance. While peasant farmers are mired in debt and suffering from hunger and drought, the armed forces of the Philippines is spending billions to modernize its military and terrorize its own people through brutal counterinsurgency and war. As Solidarity allies, we must vehemently condemn the fascist crimes of Marcos Jr. against the Filipino people. We cannot stop at that, however. We must expose the U.S. government for providing the funding, the training, the weapons to enable these war crimes. Just as we heard, as the U.S. government is complicit in genocide in Gaza, it is directly responsible for the suffering and the Filipino people at the hands of the Marcos Jr. regime. And as we heard, this latest meeting between Biden, Marcos, as well as Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, has nothing to do with, quote, friendship and, quote, shared democratic values. Rather, it demonstrates a shameless attempt by the U.S. to use the Filipino and Japanese people as pawns in its intensifying military and economic rivalry with China. Here in the U.S., we must expose the U.S.-Philippine relationship for what it is, the continued subjugation of the Filipino people in service of U.S. military and economic interests. As Biden and Marcos reaffirm their, quote, ironclad alliance, drenched in the blood of the Filipino people, we as workers, church people, environmentalists, anti-war activists, and others must strengthen ties of genuine solidarity with the Filipino people. We must expose the rotten U.S. Marcos regime and uphold the legitimate right of the Filipino people to struggle for national liberation. Almost. We repeat the calls. Marcos out of the U.S. And U.S. out of the Philippines. And demand an end to U.S.-backed war crimes in the Philippines. Let us harness our outrage to build an even broader solidarity movement and strengthen our unity as we fight for a truly free Philippines. Stop U.S. warmongering. Support the Filipino people's right to self-determination against foreign intervention. From Palestine to the Philippines, stop the U.S. war machine.